Well, it's late in the evening, and I'm on my knees. Well, it's late in the evening, and I'm on my knees. Oh, yeah. You know, I'm oh so grateful
Good morning,
for
everybody.
my government cheese. Escucha.
Morning.
Government cheese.
Morning, Randy.
It's a sad
Morning,
situation.
John.
Of my little girl
Yeah.
Louise. It's a sad situation.
There we go. Turns out that Catmo and Taj Mahal got one of those albums that does not result in a copyright claim when you play it on Facebook. So, I don't know why, but
And
all
plus,
the
it's a good
others,
song.
it's weird. They either, some of them
Keep
claim,
playing.
but then they don't stop you from playing it because you're not monetizing it, and others will stop it altogether. You know, I think it depends on the family of the artist.
Mike.
There's Mike. Hey,
It's over. It's past hump day, Mike, but I'm going to still get that out there.
Mike.
Good morning, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike, you go ahead and get that out before 9. We need to hear. Make it. Set the stage for us. We go live. We're going to get serious.
Gotta get
Yes,
silly
sir.
before you get serious, man. You gotta have some silliness.
That's right, man.
Where's your face, John Case? I don't see your face.
oh, hold on a second. Well, my wife was in here, kissing me, so I had to.
Oh,
Get a room, man. Oh, you at home. That's right. Okay.
what's up with
Let
that,
me,
man?
let me get my.
Hey, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Hey, there you go. Merry Christmas.
Hey, we don't have any bah humbugs on the show, man. We got to get some bah humbugs in here, John,
Yeah.
so we can get a
Yeah.
conversation going, man. You don't want people that always agree with you. 'Cause
No, I know.
then they get to hide. They get to
That's
hide
true.
behind
Merry
stuff.
Christmas, Mr. Potter.
That's true. Let me get.
Merry Christmas to you in
I'm gonna go ahead and
jail.
mute.
Hold on a second here. Come on, Joe. Show up here.
Every time I come on here, I always hear just before the show in my head the theme to Benny Hill. I smack myself on top of the head.
Where is my?
It's the John Case Show.
Yeah, wait. Let me get it here. There we go. Get that, and then okay, and put in the invite.
I'm all right now, but last week I was in rough shape. You know what I'm saying? I'll tell you.
All right. Okay. So, well, we got 4 or 5 minutes here.
4 or 5 minutes.
I think JB is going to be absent this morning. He has a doctor's appointment. Hey, Mike, can I make you co-host in case?
Yeah, sure. Why not? My wife will be absent this morning as well.
What, has she got something to do, like work or something? You know.
You know, John. Hey, James, do you ever feel like I love John, but occasionally I would like to punch him in the face?
That's okay. It's been done before.
Oh, I know, bud. I know. I'm teasing. I would never do that. I'd hurt my hand. I don't want.
A buddy of mine named Dave Cohen, who and I we were together negotiating a new contract with this bunch of women workers. And we were having a hard time with a lawyer, and he was a real jerk. I mean, there was worse words you could say for him. But so we had just watched, I believe, whatever that version of The Godfather is, where they kill the horse. You know what I mean? Remember that scene? And
yeah, that was the first
one of those movies. Anyway.
Hey, look. Hey, let me just look.
So wait a minute. Let me finish the story.
Right,
so then, so my friend Dave and I were right in front of the lawyer. He's just driving us crazy. So we started talking about how much we love that scene where the horse got slaughtered in the mobster's bed, or the Hollywood executive's bed, because this lawyer, he kept putting this shit to us every day and talking about how much he loved his dog.
Mm-hmm.
So after we retold this story in front of him, he reached across. He punched me right across the table. Okay, right in front of the guy. I says, okay. I says, well, I guess your dog's got a date with destiny. So anyway,
I am so tired of
I got punched that time.
Every time an Italian American it's always, we're all depicted as, part of the mob. It is so blatantly sort of true. But here.
What?
Hey, listen, I gotta let Mike meet. Let me send him an invite. I had a comedian on the other day, Mike. I wanted you to meet.
I know, I heard. Hey, Gary.
Morning.
Hey, Steven. Good morning.
There's Joe. Hey, Joe.
Yo, good morning.
I got to wait another 4 minutes because Carl always comes on at exactly 9. So that's when
That's amazing how it's exactly 9 every single time. There he is. Boom. Just like clockwork. And it is clockwork, baby. Wow. That is so cool. And there's a doggy barking. Yay. I love doggies. Hey. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Talking Socialism Show, provided to you by Enlightened Radio and our original dusty-footed philosopher and host, Mr. John Case. My name's Mike, the big mouth guy. All I do is announce things and sit back and watch people argue with each other.
That's not true. I got a letter the other day, Mike, from someone saying that they appreciated you because of the moment of levity in a very serious conversation. So, don't put yourself down about that. Anyway, by the way,
I just got back from having my blood taken. Quite seriously, I had a doctor's appointment yesterday, and I had to go in this morning and have the blood work done. The cool thing about that is I can announce that Shepherdstown's on the map now, baby, because we got our little doctor's office here now, so with a lab and everything.
Right.
It took me 7 minutes to get there and 8 minutes to get home. It was brilliant.
Mike, before you start the official opening, we got another 2 minutes. I think, see if Scott's going to come in.
Very good. All right. Outstanding.
But for people that don't know. I
thought we already started, but.
Introduce people that don't already know everybody, because Carl Davidson is on my lower left, okay? And Tina Shannon, if you raise your hand so people, because
hi, Tina.
And Garry Geffert, who's an employment attorney and other things in Shepherdstown here, and
Martinsburg, please.
Huh?
Martinsburg, we don't even go to Jefferson County.
Okay, I got you, pal. Randy Shannon, and from, I guess, Beaver County, right? Is that right? Randy and Tina both. And James Boyd, who's been the recovery struggle here. And he went back to New Jersey, but he's back again in Martinsburg. So, or he's going to be back, right? Assuming this.
Are you already in Martinsburg, Mr. Boyd?
I'm in Belleville, New Jersey right now.
Okay, you're in Jersey.
Right now, okay. And Joe Sims is my, not quite lifelong friend, but and co-chair of the Communist Party. And but we've worked together occasionally in the past. And one thing about Joe is that I guess we've argued about things for 40 years now, and we agree about 70% of them, or 80, sometimes 100.
John.
And anyway, I'm so glad that he decided to come on today.
Arising from his tomb, Lawrence.
Oh, it's Bish. Bish is here. All right.
Nice, Larry.
Larry Bish, let's see. He has a biography and possibly almost as he's kind of like I call him Woody Guthrie, sometimes. But anyway, he's a musician and he works at the jail, or he did work at the jail before COVID came, and he's one ex-Marine like James here, and they've been our vet source of pride actually on this show.
Hell, I'm just glad to see him. It's good to see you.
Anyway, welcome, Scott. Good to see you this morning.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
All right, buddy. Also, another guy that we've worked together off and on for half a century now. So anyway, welcome. We're going to try. I've been advised to try to get younger people to help come out. I'm working on that. Okay, I'm working on that.
Hey, I'm a kid.
And let me also just outline the format. We changed the format a little bit. I think it worked a little bit better last time when Kathy Kunkel was on. So our guest this morning is Joe, and he's written an article which I posted in the links to the show today, basically asking whether or not a popular front against fascism is in order. I know I'm oversimplifying, and he'll explain better than me. But I think it's an important question to discuss, considering the every day the news we see about yesterday 100 Republican congressmen joined the suit against the suit in the Supreme Court to overturn the election. So it's not over yet. Anyway, that's I just wanted to do that. The format will be Joe, the guest, introduces and opens up. We follow with questions, just questions, and then comments from the panel. And then if I don't know, Joe may have to leave a little bit early. I think he has another gig at 10, but anyway, we'll give him an opportunity to respond also at the end. So with that, Mike, can you introduce the show, please? And by the way, it's the Online University of the Left. That's the co-sponsor. Okay,
right,
thank
you. I would like to say good morning to everyone and welcome to Talking Socialism, brought to you by Enlightened Radio and Online University from the left. The left, okay?
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
You got it.
And your host, welcome to your original dusty-footed philosopher and host, Mr. John Case. I'd like to say good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America. All the ships at sea, planes in the air, and vehicles on the ground. Thank you for tuning in to Talking Socialism.
All right. You're up, Joe. Tell us about this article and what's up, man?
Thank you, and it's great. It's great to see everybody, and thanks, Mikey, for that introduction. I don't know quite how to start. I feel like in many respects I'm on a seesaw. One day there's good news. The Supreme Court, in a one-sentence statement, tells the Republican Party, get out of town, don't even try that lawsuit. And then the next day, there is this suit from Texas that was joined by, I don't know how many, 105, 106 Republicans in this friend of the court brief. And maybe I should start with a dream I had last night. I don't quite remember it, but it had something to do with fear and people with guns and the military. And this is not a preoccupation of mine in my conscious waking moments. Now and then, you might have a nightmare kind of a dream, but yesterday I heard the news about this 106, and the Texas, and then I was listening to the news programs, and I can only imagine that in my subconscious mind, you know, one of the law enforcement officials was talking about that the ultimate result of Trump's agitation might be what he called a flashpoint, you know, a flashpoint meaning some kind of military, armed, terroristic kind of response to what's taking place in the country from the right. And that, I think, you know, kind of stirred around in the back of my mind and made me wake up in a cold sweat. I wrote that article because I was trying to figure out what was happening and to provide a certain direction with respect of where we have to go and how to get there. But again, as I say, the news vacillates so much from day to day. The issue for me is not whether or not we need a popular front, a people's front. Clearly we do. There needs to be a broad coalition ongoing to address this deep crisis. I say ongoing because somewhere between a third and a half of the country don't believe the election was legitimate. They have been convinced of that. And that's a crisis. And the issue is, you know, what can be done in order to address that reality. And I think that it's probably going to be several different combinations of things. So we need to make sure the inauguration happens, and then we need to address the various levels of the crisis. Unemployment is going up again. COVID is out of control. I ain't telling y'all nothing you don't know. There's a crisis of confidence in government in general. And I don't think it's just from the right. I think that a lot of people in the center and on the left have the same kinds of feelings. And so what can be done to restore anxiety and first and foremost, that has to address, you know, bread and butter kinds of issues. Because if you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, and we see these food lines that are just, you know, sometimes extending for around several blocks, sometimes for miles, it's a rather difficult situation. So I was trying to address those issues, and there's a lot of debate, you know, about the cabinet, who's in and who's out and all of that. And to me, that's not all that important. What's more important is the ability of the broad working class public to bring pressure to bear, to stay organized and mobilized to make sure that the platform that Biden and Harris got elected on is enacted. I think that's a big issue. And there's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of mobilization. But since this is a show about talking socialism, one thing, and I'll end with this, that is important is what is the relative strength of the left in order to, in a unified way, push forward the kinds of demands. You know, in the 1930s, there was a big communist party, there was a big socialist left. You know, there was a lot of activity on the ground. And while the left is growing now, it's not nearly as strong as it was back then. And so making that happen, I think is a issue. So the forms of the front changes. Doesn't stay the same, you know, and the fight for unity has to continue. But most important is what can we bring from the ground up to keep the movement going? I think that that's the chief question before all of us as we go through this difficult period.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Questions.
And I wanted to welcome Ted and Dan to the program.
Right. Okay. Hi, Dan.
Good morning, fellas.
Ted. Ted Boettner, who's what are you doing right now? You're the Ohio. What's the name of your? I guess so. I can't.
My kid's teacher right now.
Of organizations anymore. I'm sorry. I'm lucky if I can remember the Republican and Democratic Party's name. But
yeah, it's the Ohio River Valley Institute. It's like a new policy group.
Oh, cool.
All right. And okay. So questions for Joe.
Tina had her hand up first.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably like all of you, I've been working to build a united front here where I live in Beaver County, which is Western PA in the Rust Belt. My county used to have the most concentration of steel mills, I think, in the whole country, and has been in decline ever since they left. So I was up late last night speaking with a friend of mine who is the co-chair of the Democratic committee in the next county over, and she's pretty left. So what we were talking about was the need. We were talking about having a car caravan to demand, concrete relief, like checks for people, and also some relief for small business, because we're seeing more small business people start to be afraid of the virus, but also like they're starting to talk to us about, well, yeah, I can see now that the virus is real, but what am I supposed to do? So we were talking about having a car caravan to either take it to Allegheny, to our right-wing senator's neighborhood and just drive around really slow, or to drive around the airport really slow to slow down, the ability to bring goods in, sort of like an imitation of longshoremen. But on the other hand, the question I have is, on the other hand, it does feel like we're being lured into having a reaction to the, the protests over the election. And I do not want to fall into the hands of the right wing by giving them any reasons to become violent. I feel like that's what they're just ready for that. So I was just wondering what your opinion was about, like, when do we start getting people out in the street to build this demand for more concrete relief in this, what's looking like an economic depression? Is it now? Do we give Biden, like a month to get on the ground? Or do we build it now? Are things too volatile right now to go out in the street? I don't know. So we just started talking about it. Randy and I started talking about it this morning. So I just am interested in what other people think about that.
You want to respond to each question, Joe, or you want to wait?
Maybe I'll wait.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I share Tina's question about timing, and also on putting some street heat. But I'm concerned about what I'd like to do is I've appreciated that. One thing I've appreciated about Trump's effort is forced people to sign these lists. So we now have 17 state attorney generals and over 100 and some Congress people. So what I'm interested in is should we direct our actions, say a car caravan around, there's a Republican that represents Aliquippa. She lives down in Washington County. Bartolotta is her name. And she's been supportive of this effort. So should we find a local, should we surround the local Republicans and let them know that the people are against this, and they should cut it out and let the election stand.
Other questions? All right, Joe, you want to respond to the questions, and then we'll open up the commentary.
Well, to me, well, first of all, it's a little difficult for me to gauge the temperature of where things are. I'm in New York. Up until the COVID crisis, I would go back home to Youngstown once a month. Tina and Randy, I'm from down the street from you guys. Carl, right. You too. But after, I haven't been back there since March, though I stay in contact with my family. And so it's a little difficult for me to assess where things are in the Midwest and other parts of the country. But I think the time for protest and pressure is now. How you protest, and I've never been a fan of getting in the face of the right wing. I remember what happened in the Carolinas when they had that demonstration against the Klan, way back when. And I've never been a fan necessarily of slowing down traffic, because I always thought that it turned the public against you. You can't get where you're going, no matter how just the cause, to me, it's not necessarily a good tactic. But I do think that protests at Republican offices, either in a car caravan or on the street in a safe way, is a good thing to do. And I think that the issue of the unemployment compensation expiring in a couple of weeks, the moratorium on evictions expiring in a couple of weeks, those kinds of bread and butter issues are the things that we ought to focus on. So yes, the protest, I don't think we should try to wait for 100 days or 30 days. I think that we can protest in a way which is not against the incoming administration. In fact, you can support it. You can support it without, falling into a, right-wing kind of trap. But to stay mobilized, to stay organized, in a public way, I think is really important.
Let me let's start the discussion. And I was going to ask. There was an interesting quote in your article, Joe, that I think it went something like the GOP. Somebody had remarked that the GOP was the worst political movement in the history of the world, and or something like that. It was to that effect. And I thought, I think, everyone has been, me included. I've termed Trumpism a fascist movement based on its close resemblance to, the movements of the 1930s that ended up costing 60 million lives to repress. And it's not exactly the same, of course, as the 1930s. It's a new configuration of forces, but it has a lot of similarities. And one of the similarities is that these forces have lost. You can't count on them having any consideration at all for what you think of as the norms of democracy. Any democracy, whether it's a flawed one, like I believe we've had for quite a while, or a more perfect one. And I think that the disputations with fascist forces in most cases have, you have to employ force against it. Electing someone and counting on the goodwill of a majority and respecting it is not part of their toolkit. Okay, I mean, they've worked themselves into a situation where they will not recognize the legitimacy of an elected president that's against them. So with that, that's all I'm going to say is I think that I'll predict that that counting on Biden and Harris to do something without you doing something yourself is a fool's errand. And I'm sure that if Joe Biden were here and for Kamala Harris, they would say the same thing. Nobody probably knows better than them exactly, you know, the titanic configuration of conflicts that are at work here at the national level. So I'm going to stop there and ask if that was kind of my reaction to Joe's article. Anybody else want to lead off here and with the commentary? Otherwise, I'll have to call it. Okay, Randy, raise your hand. You're still muted, I think. Yeah.
Well,
you're good.
I just think, I know there's a whine here. My son says it's the fan on my computer. You know, if I'm going to go out and expose myself for something or against something, it's got to be for health care. I mean, this is the only free country in the world that doesn't provide health care in some way. And people are dying. People can't get into hospitals. They can't see doctors because they can't afford this private for-profit healthcare system that we have. And I'm talking about everybody. I'm not dividing it about who voted for Biden, who didn't vote, who voted for Trump. Everybody. So if I'm going to do something, then it has to be something that builds a united front at the base. And if we don't think about it like that, then, you know, we're kind of talking like it's very ephemeral. You know, what is the united front unless you have a mass movement at the base? And, you know, given all the work that we've done over the last year and a half, 2 years, we need to start recruiting members into all of these left organizations and into progressive organizations like Progressive Democrats of America. And I don't think you're going to get people to join by, you know, demonstrating at Toomey's office. Now, the Western PA Coalition for Single Payer Healthcare is having a picket line at Congressman Lamb's headquarters. And he's a particular blue dog. He's almost become world famous as a blue dog. So anyway, I'll stop there, but you know, that's my point. Number one, how do you recruit people to whatever organization you're in? And if your plot, your strategy, your tactics doesn't do that, then don't waste my time.
Scott.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point to discuss, and I kind of want to remind us, you know, a lot of us were very involved in getting Barack Obama elected, and it was a huge step forward in so many ways. But then after he was elected, it was kind of like everybody went home, and we expected him to solve all the problems that we had been working, that we've been worried about and organizing about. And I think we definitely have to avoid doing that now. I think the most important thing to follow a little bit on what Randy says, I agree on healthcare, but I also think we've got to be leading the fight on unemployment. We've got to be leading the fight for food. We've got to lead the rent stuff and all of that. And I'll tell you, we had this experience in the Steelworkers Union that when Trump first got elected, people were, the leadership was kind of nervous about you know, taking him on because we'd lose some of our members and stuff like that. But what we found out is when we went out and championed the things that the workers really needed, that our members really needed, that's when we started winning people over. And I think that's the same thing with this. And I totally agree about the recruiting part of it. And I have to say, we're seeing an upsurge. And I think that a lot of groups are seeing an upsurge, and we've just got to spend as much time as we can in consolidating that and getting those people into action. It's not enough just to join up. You got to get immersed in the struggle. So anyway, I think it's going to be hard for the crazy right to attack people who are demanding food for people. You know, that's just not going to make sense to anybody. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Who wants to go next?
Wait, you want people to actually have sustenance and live and exist? How dare you?
I know.
How about that?
You
James,
know how us commies are.
James, you're up.
Yeah, I read somewhere. Oh, by the way, I appreciate the article. I have a two-part question. But first, I'd like to say that I read somewhere that my people perish for lack of knowledge. So can you tell me, elaborate a little about the phrase, the struggle for the soul of the nation? What is the soul of the nation? And how did the left become the left? And how did the right become the right?
You want to respond to that, Joe?
Yeah, that was for Joe.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Quickly on the second question, I think it goes back to, what was it, France and the fight in the country and in the assembly, and those who were favoring the aristocracy sat on the right side, and those who favored a republic sat on the left. So that's where the terms originated. They were class terms. Those who were against democracy sat on the right. Those who favored it sat on the rising merchants, aristocracy on the right, the rising merchants and peasants and workers on the left. Now it's kind of changed a little bit, and there are like cultural definitions with respect to where you stand on different issues, but that's where it originates. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. With respect to the soul of the nation, that's a good question. And I think that it is contested, you know, what constitutes our soul. Of course, for those who are religious, it is that thing that ascends after fasting. I'm not a religious man, but all respect to those who are. But for me, the soul of the nation is constituted by those who want to do the right thing, if I can put it that way, you know, and those who are for decency, for democracy, for equality, and peace and all of that. And then finally, yes, ground up healthcare, jobs, evictions, food, that's where, we have to be. And it's a little bit tough now because the COVID crisis is kind of preventing people from, at least older people, who are rightfully afraid of, being out on the street. On the other hand, young people, during the uprising around for Black Lives, we were from, June through May through September out on the streets. But for older generations, it presents a little bit of challenge. That's why I'm hoping that vaccine comes quickly and so that come summertime, we can do what we need to do.
Mike had his hand up, and also Gary. Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, I had my hand up. I wasn't gonna, the commentary is not just, we were talking about left and right and the soul of America, and I think doing the right thing by people is probably an instinct in a lot of folks, but I also think, unfortunately, selfishness is selfishness, and I got mine, has kind of pushed its way into American culture, American psyche. Not I am my brothers and sisters keeper. Not that, how do we redefine our moral contract with our neighbors? What is my responsibility to you? What is your responsibility to me? What do we, where are we at in this thing? Even if we disagree politically, can I still help my neighbor? Yes, of course. I can disagree with my neighbor on a myriad of issues, and yet if something happens in plain sight and my neighbor needs my help, I'm going to help him. I think sometimes that now is missing. I've heard folks on the left and the right say, oh, well, he deserves that. Screw him. I'm not going to do anything to help him. That's, that's kind of a sick attitude. And I think that sickness has kind of permeated. There's a selfishness to it, which I think in some circles, as it goes, is equated to rugged individualism, which I think is a whole lot of bullshit. So that's
gotcha.
my
Gary. Gary, followed by Thomas, followed by Larry.
The struggle, I was struck by the comment on the struggle for the soul of the nation, because I think that the other side has already identified that and is working on it. One of the hopeful signs arising out of the healthcare disaster was what seemed to be a growing movement to improving access to healthcare either by expanding the Affordable Care Act or some other means. And the other side has recognized that. They're running on, I keep seeing on television already, a set of ads. First is call your congressman because they want to control drug prices, and so that's going to be terrible because we won't have any more drugs. And the second is, and then there is one about, which is clearly directed at expanding Medicare, I think, which talks about, urges people to call their doctor, call their congressman and tell them to keep their hands out of our doctors' pockets. They call it, they phrased it as defunding the doctors. And that's, somebody's spending a bunch of money on that. And it reminded me of the early days of the Clinton administration, when everybody agreed that there was a healthcare crisis. We had to do something about healthcare until those ads with the, I can't remember the couple anymore, but the
Harold
couple,
and Maude.
Thank you. But the couple, I was a different couple, but the same.
Okay.
Yeah, more like Bonnie and Clyde. But the the whole thing about these kitchen tables is terrible. They're going to take away our insurance. We're not going to be able to see the doctor. So that struggle is already going on at that level. And I think Mikey's point about the selfishness is exactly that. I mean, there are the pushback on a simple thing like wearing masks, which does nothing to anybody. You don't give up anything except being able to spit on the sidewalk without getting it in your mask. It's my body, and so it's my choice, even though that's not what the mask is about. And there's nothing out there that claims it is, that the mask is about preventing spread as opposed to preventing getting it. And it's a serious problem. And I see that even with people that I regard as friends and who are willing to help out on anything except wearing a mask when they're around. It's just an interesting and a very troubling problem to get around. And part of the other, in talking about the bills that are up for subsidies, there are a bunch of small business people. They're being driven out, and that's not being addressed by anything that's going on in Congress right now. I mean, the small restaurants and some of the small businesses are just going to go. They just can't survive. And combined with that is really the effect of the stays on evictions, because what isn't recognized, there are lots of big landlords who can afford to take the hit, but even more, there are lots of people that have, in addition to their home, they got maybe one house that they rent out, and the rent income from that is a significant part of their income. I got a client, you know, he's got to go in business, and he's got a house, but he's also got a couple of rental properties that are a significant part of his income. And once that's gone, you know, he's got mortgages to pay. And small landlords have mortgages to pay, and they're getting killed. And I think that ignoring that aspect of it really hurts the ability to pull people in, and because their thing is we're not getting anything and we're getting killed, and why is it just me?
I just want to point out there was actually a supplemental part of the CARES Act was directed at that small business.
Yeah, but so let's keep going in order, if we can. Next was, I believe, Thomas. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thomas, could you introduce yourself a little bit, because I don't recognize you?
Oh, no problem. My name's Thomas Sigurdsson. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm also a stand-up comedian and a DIY artist, and I live in.
Oh, that's right. We saw you the other day on the recovery. Okay.
Excuse me. You do stand-up.
All right, sir. Man. Okay.
Thomas, yeah. I did stand-up for 30 years.
That's a fantastic.
I also ran a club for 10. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I know how it goes. So I'm going to stay on topic as much as I possibly can with my ADHD ass, but here we go.
Cool.
Okay.
So I'm a young person. I'm 36 years old. I'm about to turn 37. I was brought up in a time that they told you if you got a piece of paper, you're going to be fine, which is not the case. I'm fortunate enough to have my student loans paid off because I worked hard. I'm a straight white male, college educated, and I have never made more than $30,000 a year in my life. I am struggling, and every one of my friends is struggling. And we've had old people tell us our entire life that we don't fucking work hard. Part of my language. But I'm tired of doing it. I used to work for Medicare and Medicaid, and for 4 years, and most people don't know about balanced billing. You know, every medical organization in the world is contracted with certain things, and basically they have to pay. You know, if this procedure costs $250, you get $250, but they don't do balance billing. So they send this bill out. We have contacted your insurance company, and because of this, you pay this amount. And old people and ignorant people pay it all the time, and it happens all the time, and no one even addresses it. And that is why I've lived in other countries and received medical treatment in other countries. I had to get gastric sleeve surgery in Mexico because this country wouldn't cover it. They were willing to pay $500,000 if my heart exploded because I work at a call center, and I made more money at a call center than being a sheriff's deputy. That's fucked. It's totally fucked. All right. And then we have the minimum wage that hasn't went up in years. We cannot sustain as the average young person with the way that the wages are. 3/4 of our salaries are going towards rent. So how are we supposed to save money to we're never going to have the same standard of living as our parents. We're never going to be able to do it. Whereas an entire generation of people that are going to struggle for the rest of their lives, live paycheck to paycheck, and die. And we're supposedly in the richest country in the world that has all the resources. Take a tiny percentage of the military budget, that thing that's like 9 times as high as the next 8 or 9 countries combined. We have enough fucking missiles. We have enough guns. This establishment and the American people, we have been totally fucked. Other countries are supporting their people for months at a time and paying them to stay home and stay safe. And now I'm in a position where I have to decide whether I want to get a $10 an hour job and die, or just make it like I have been unemployed for a year. And guess what? We're young and we're dumb. We will go out and do what we need to do if we have to, because we're fucking tired of it. And
Thomas, thank you very much for saying what's, in a lot of people's brains. I appreciate that. And I respect it. I understand it and I get it, man. It is my brother, my younger brother, who is in your age area. I mean, he's a little older, but he's an HVAC mechanic and he works for my older brother, and they're considered, essential employees. And they crawl up into commercial spaces all the time and have to carry sheet metal and all this other bullshit. And, my brother's getting paid a pretty nice salary, but he has a mortgage. He has 2 kids. His wife is an ER nurse down in Culpeper. And, they're not older, they're younger, and they're still getting their ass kicked. They can't go on vacation. Vacation is a foreign word.
All right. Next in line is Larry Bish. All right, Larry.
There's a lot to reply to. I started with Joe and his addressing this last legal action by all these states. Either way, if they won that, it would still result in chaos. They have to know that. They have to know that people would die, even if they won that. So who are we dealing with? They want a minority rule. They're not the least bit interested in democratic processes. They're perfectly willing to bring the whole ceiling down on all of us. And then John's recognition of the potential violence. I couldn't agree more with that. Gary's point about healthcare, and by the way, most importantly, Thomas and his presence here. Look at that. And John, you said we need more young people. You're goddamn right. We need a lot more young people because the young people are the ones that are getting hit the hardest and have been right along. The young people are the ones who have witnessed the last 40 years firsthand as a maturing American. And then on that, who's the American? It's one of the things that this large group of people want to determine who's American. And they do it. And the last thing I have to say is it's a psychological profile of Trumpsters. And that is that it's been long known that one of the attractions is why working class people vote against their own interests all the time is because they consider themselves, and who said selfish, Mikey, they consider themselves temporarily inconvenienced wealthy people. So they side with who they see as their potential associates and partners. And so this is largely unconscious. So they're going to follow Trump because they admire Trump. They'd like to be Trump. A lot of these people, especially the core people. And I mentioned the last time I was on here, a little book by Eric Hoffer, written in the 40s, called The True Believer. The True Believer is a personality type that seeks a reason to join a cause, any cause that that he can join and gain significance by being willing to die for it. That's a characteristic of this so-called psychological profile of a believer. And you see it in religion, certainly see it in Islam, but it exists here now. You see it in Trump. As far as the healthcare goes, where's the GOP healthcare? It's not enough to swing these people over to a more democratic and socialist way of thought. Caring for your neighbor, everybody doesn't do that. You know, really, just listening to all this, all points are great points. But I think one of the most important points I want to make is that look at what Thomas said, because we're not getting out there. I've been on unpaid leave for 9 months because I'm 70 years old. I work in a jail, and my wife says, no way, you're not going. You know, and my kids too.
She did say, that's right.
And so I've been lucky enough to have enough good service behind me and recognition that that the state has gone along with me being out at work on unpaid leave this long, and lucky enough to have savings enough to weather this. So that's all fortunate. It goes back to what Thomas said. He couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. So,
I think everybody's weighed in except Ted. Yeah. And I know he has secret thoughts, so I'd like to get him.
That's right. Do we weigh in on Thomas or what Joe is talking about?
Whatever you want, you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'd like to say thank you, Thomas, for sharing your story too, and Joe, enjoyed the piece. One big question I'm a little bit more very pessimistic, probably in the group. I don't see much material conditions changing for people over the next, unless there's just massive labor strikes. That's the only thing that's really going to save us, I think. But you know, what do you see happening if Biden and Harris cannot, improve the material conditions of the majority of people over the next 2 or 4 years? What do you see happening, Joe?
Well, that's another good question. And, I don't know the answer to it, to be frank. Yes, there's selfishness. Yes. I mean, I'm not sure how new that is. But there was also a springing up of humanity when the health crisis first broke out, with COVID. There was the emergence of a whole mutual aid network where people were helping people, neighbors were helping neighbors. Young people were going out and buying food for older people. People were calling each other to check on each other. That did happen, and it's still happening. So, and it was universal. I mean, not everybody did it. Don't misunderstand me, or misinterpret. But a lot of people from different walks of life joined in that process. So I think that yes, there's a lot of ugly, and everybody knows the Lord don't like ugly, but there's also a lot of good, and I think that it's important to have a balanced approach to it. With respect to, the crisis is now, and but I also feel like, at least for me and the folks in my family, this crisis has been here for a long time. The mills shut down in Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania in the late 70s. And they never opened back up, you know. One of the things that I was struck by in the last election is that Mahoning County, where I come from, for the first time since 1972, voted Republican. You know, Biden and Harris increased their vote over Clinton by 200 votes, but Trump won by 3,000 or 4,000. And which says to me that the right is more organized right now in those particular areas. They had a better ground game, and they were able to pull out their troops. And so that's why I said that, you know, I don't see us waiting. I think that the time for action and organization is now, that the fight to implement the Democratic platform that was adopted at the convention is now, you know. And the road to that, of course, leads through Georgia and what happens on the 5th. Because without that, you know, John Case posted an article the other day in the Socialist Economics group, which argued that it makes more sense for the politicians to fight for everything in that program that was put forward and fight for it hard than try to appease the Republicans, to try to find rooms for compromise. Because even if the election is won in Georgia, what are you going to do about the Blue Dogs? You know, they're still there, and there's a significant number of them. So public mass pressure, demonstrations, letter writing, petitions, occupation, strikes. What bothers me is that how can you have, you know, these soup lines and, you know, you hardly hear a peep about. So I think that I'd like to see the soup lines, people on the soup line go to the Safeways and the Krogers and the other supermarkets and take their food. You know, that's what I'd like to see happen. Who's going to organize that? Because they're hungry. And that's the kind of thing that needs to happen in order to get the attention of the powers that be, that something has to be done.
Oh my God.
Okay, we're coming up on the, let me
that's what I'm talking
pause
about.
for a moment here. We're almost at the, we got about 7 minutes left in the hour. I was going to try to get, we don't have time for one more round, but I was going to ask Carl to comment and take us out in a second. You up for that, Carl? Can you do a second?
Yeah, that's fine.
I think, by the way, those who don't know, Carl Davidson has been the national leader of the committees of correspondence for democracy and socialism for many years. I don't think he is now, but he's been involved in everything, and all the way back to the Vietnam War and the Guardian and SDS and everything else. So I think he's qualified to summarize too. I wanted to ask, add one thing to what Ted said, and I do think that we should be thinking about what a political strike is. And West Virginia teachers demonstrated what one was. Okay. Only about 30% of the teachers are actually organized, but 100% went out. And why? Because in addition to the being denied wage increases for 15 years and their insurance not being paid, they had a strike over that their parents and students in most parts supported, because it was a strike to protect their own children. And they did an excellent job in most counties popularizing that. And so the problem with political strikes is that the governor can lie and not carry out the contract he signed. So, but this is possible to do. And I don't remember a time in my history in the labor movement where it was as necessary to do. I think right now, the economics of West Virginia counties, for example, if they don't get relief coming up pretty soon, you're going to see the judges and all the county commissioners on the picket line too, because they're all going to not be paid. It's that serious a situation that is coming here. And if people aren't necessarily passionate now, reality will make them passionate in one way or another. That's clearly coming. Anyway, that's my thought. Carl.
About a week before the election, just after I put up my Biden sign, I'm out walking my dog, and my neighbor, who's a white working class white worker, construction worker, he pulls up his car and he asks me, "How are we going to get that Kluxer out of the White House?" My point is, so we had a talk about, he said he's done everything but put the white pointy hood on. So we had a good discussion. We talked about Trump as a fascist and a racist, and we also talked about the Steelworkers Union he used to be part of, and how he turned solidly against the Republicans when the steel mills shut down. And he also talked about, we talked about Green New Deal and healthcare, but the question he approached me on was the key political question. Yeah, his first question to me was, how do we get that Ku Kluxer out of the White House? And I think it's an important point that we shouldn't underestimate the masses. Some of them are going to be solidly for Trump, fanatically, as we can see so. That should tell us something. The main political question of the day is that Trump is trying to organize a coup. I'm all for Medicare for all and Green New Deal and all of that stuff, and then we got to build around that. But the immediate political question of the day is Trump is taking a case for a coup to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is likely to smack him down, but what happens next? He's got a huge bloc with a lot of power, and they're threatening violence. So we can't ignore this question. It has to be at the center of our work. We just can't find an easier, softer way around it. But, by talking for Medicare for all, or things that people might agree with, economic issues that people might agree with. The main political question of the day demands something of us, and it's going to make us a lot of friends, and it's going to make us some enemies, because it's the main struggle. There's no easier, softer way around it.
All right. Well, that's the last word for today. We're at the time limit. I want to thank especially Joe for joining and leading the discussion today. Thank you so much. I know you got another gig that you do in about 1 minute.
Well done, Joe.
Anyway,
thanks, guys.
Thank everybody. Thank Thomas for coming on. Come back anytime, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Send me a friend request on Facebook, Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Right. Mike, you want to close it up?
I want to thank everyone, all of our guests. I would especially like to thank Enlightened Radio for providing the services for Talking Socialism every Friday with your original Dusty Footed philosopher and host, Mr. John Case. We want to thank Online University to the left. I'm Mike. Thanks. We'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.